Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ed Schlesinger. I'm the Benjamin T. Rome Dean of the Whiting School of Engineering, and I want to welcome you all to the 2020 Harriet Shriver Rogers Lecture. I'm excited to know that so many of you are participating with us today virtually. So happy you could take part in this. And I know we have a wonderful program in store for you. But before I introduce today's speaker, I want to acknowledge the family that has made this Whiting School tradition possible. This endowed lectureship was established in 1991 by Dr. William H.B. Howard in honor of his mother, Harriet Shriver Rogers, whose support made it possible for him to matriculate at Johns Hopkins following his military service. Harriet Shriver Rogers was a remarkable woman whose interests ranged from the raising of Shetland ponies and authoring children's books to, later in life, competing in the Senior Olympics at the state and national levels and winning medals in several track and field events. When Mrs. Rogers died in 1993 at the age of 84, she was survived by her daughter, Frances H. Flatow, and her son, Dr. William H.B. Howard, a general surgeon, sports medicine expert, and an avid amateur rugby player, who co-founded MedStar, Union Memorial Hospital's sports medicine clinic. In 2001, Dr. Howard created the Frances Howard Flatow Scholarship in honor of his sister. Sadly, Dr. Howard passed away in January of 2016, but I am honored that his sister, Franny Flatow, is with us here today representing the Howard family. Franny has not missed a lecture since we started this event, and we are grateful to have her with us today, even through COVID-19 and even in this virtual manner. And now, I'd like to introduce our 2020 Harriet Shriver Rogers Lecturer, Linda Cureton. Linda received her bachelor's degree in mathematics and Latin from Howard University in 1980. She went on to earn a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University in 1998 and completed her postmaster's advanced certificate in 1999, both in applied mathematics. And last week, Linda successfully defended her dissertation on organizational leadership at the University of Maryland, and so will, or has, or will receive her doctorate quite shortly. Linda's career has taken her to many exciting places. She started her career at the US Department of Justice, where she spent 17 years as a deputy director. From there, she spent time with the US Department of Energy, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Bowie State University before working with NASA as Chief Information Officer. There, she led one of the best IT organizations in the government, serving as the principal advisor to the NASA administrator and providing insight and technology leadership to some of the world's most brilliant scientists and engineers. In 2013, Linda founded Muse Technologies Incorporated. Muse Technologies specializes in offering the private sector, the federal government, and small business owners experience in technology, management, and human capital challenges. A thought leader and known strategic innovator, her more than 40 years of public service ensure Muse delivers responsive solutions in leadership, program management, and organizational development. We are truly fortunate to have Linda with us today to share her story and the trajectory her career has taken since graduating from Johns Hopkins. Please welcome Linda Cureton. Linda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Yes. Is that good? Yes, good. Okay, thank you for the introduction, and I'm honored to be the Harriet Shriver Rogers lecturer for today. So what I will talk about today are these following topics: my career launches, plural, and landings, plural. I also want to talk about what I wish I knew when I graduated from Hopkins. And also, I'm going to take a little detour into leadership because I think that that is especially important to discuss, and hopefully will leave the listeners with some nuggets that they can take away other than just what I did, when I grew up. And then finally, another nugget for the listener: what about you? What are you going to do with these takeaways? So a bit on my career journey. And when I did the slide this morning, one of the things that I hadn't realized was that my graduation from Hopkins after the second time with the postmaster's advanced certificate was a point of inflection in my life. When I looked at it, I said, gee, my life took a turn after I did that after I graduated. So I'll talk about that more in just a second. But I graduated from Howard University in 1980, as Dean Ed Schlesinger said, and with studying in mathematics. My first intention was to be a pre-med major. I got a chance to go into college a year early. I went to DC Public Schools. Washington, DC Public Schools had a program called the High School College Internship Program, where I was able in my 12th grade year to be a full-time freshman at Howard University. I wanted to do that because I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and I majored in music. I was a French horn player and a piano player, but I loved math and I wanted to take calculus, and my counselor was looking for ways for me to take calculus and applied for me to get in this program, and I got in there. What all the incoming people in this program did was major in pre-med. So I did what everybody else did, a major in pre-med. But I didn't care for it so much. And my Latin professor told me something that I want to leave with you today, that if you do what you love, you will be successful. I didn't have to be a doctor. I didn't have to be a pre-med and a doctor or a surgeon to be successful, but I had to do with what I loved, which is mathematics, which is why I switched. It was my intention to get a PhD in mathematics, and I had obtained a full scholarship at Howard University to go on to the master's and the PhD. But life got in the way of a first husband, the first administration, as I call him, who wanted me to not go to school, so I could work and get a new car because I needed a new master cylinder for my Dodge 225 Slant 6 and a new radiator too, by the way. So since I needed a new radiator, a new master cylinder, I did not get the PhD in mathematics, and I got a job reluctantly at NASA as a mathematician. So eventually, the first administration wanted to leave the Washington, D.C. area and go live in Seattle. So I had to quit my good job at NASA and get another job in the Seattle area. But I ended up divorcing him, divorcing that job, and coming back to the Washington, D.C. as a systems programmer for Department of Justice. While at Department of Justice, I got my first management job, which was basically a team leader and leading a team of systems programmers like me. And I started moving up to become a second level team leader, team branch chief to manage teams of programmers. It was at that time that I decided to go and get my master's degree at Johns Hopkins, and that was in the late 90s. I finished that in the 92. I married the current administration, Doug Cureton, and we worked together. So I met him in the computer room, and he asked me if I was married, and I said, "Oh well, I'm separated." And he said, "Well, I hope you and your husband get back together again." And I said, "Well, I hope not." So he made his move eventually, and we got married in 1992. We worked together. So there were, some certain things about working together that we had to navigate. And one of the things was that he was a little higher in management than I was. And he couldn't supervise me. So we had to navigate our our rise in the organization very carefully. He retired in 1999, and then I was able to move up to be in a position that was over him at that time. After that, I got my first executive job in government at Department of Energy. It was horrific, but it was the best experience of my life. After that, I went to Department of Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to be the Deputy Assistant Director of Science and Technology. I was there for 4 years. And after that, I went to NASA, back to where I started from, to be the CIO of Goddard Space Flight Center. Um, while one thing I forgot to say about the 90s, when in the 90s, around the time that I either started or finished at Hopkins, I discovered that I had a gift, and I had a gift in organizational problem solving. I'll come back to that in, later on toward the end of this discussion. But the organizational problem solving was probably a natural extension from a technical skill I had, which was problem determination and debugging. I was very good at debugging programs. I was better at debugging them than actually writing them. So that skill sort of matured into being able to debug organizations in essence. After I left ATF, as I said, I went back to NASA as the CIO of Goddard. And 4 years later, I was promoted to be the CIO of the entire agency. I retired from NASA in 2013. And when I made the decision to retire, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. Did I want to be a CIO someplace else? Did I want to flip and work for, one of the Beltway bandits or the large integrators like SAIC or something like that? Or did I want to start my own company? So the last thing that I wanted to do on the bottom of the list was to start my own company because the economy wasn't really good. I didn't really know so much about running a company and being my own CEO. So I decided to be a CIO someplace else. So I got an interview for the job. It went very well. One thing about it was in New Mexico. And I liked the desert, so it was not so bad. And it was on a Southwest Airlines hub, so I could manage that and come home on the weekends. But when I started realizing what I would have to do again, I just didn't want to do it again be a CIO. One of the things about being a CIO is you end up dealing with governance. That is how decisions are made about technology, how to allocate scarce resources, how to get the information to the right people to make those decisions and ensure the mission of NASA is successful. NASA with such a lofty mission and with technology being as interwoven as it is with everything, it was a very, very difficult challenge, but very rewarding. The other thing about being a CIO is that it required having good relationships with the mission, with the people who actually delivered the technology, who launched the missions, the astronauts, and all of that to make sure that the technology that they had could help the best people do the best thing that they could do. And finally, and the most important thing, which I will pivot off of in a deeper discussion, is about leadership. The CIO has to be a good leader. So we focus a lot on technology, the technology challenges, the integration, but the leadership is, as perhaps in Star Wars, Yoda would say, it's the force. It's the force that the CIO uses to do what she needs to do. And that's about managing the workforce, about communication skills, which means listening and speaking, and the courage to not just do things, but the courage to do the right things. And I suppose that you would consider the lightsaber of a CIO to be leadership. So one of the things that one of the three things I'll talk about that I wish I knew when I left Hopkins was the first, how to use my gifts versus strengthening my weaknesses. And I talked about, I discovered I had a gift for problem determination. It took me years before I translated that into a skill that was a leadership skill, a skill that could come in, assess the situation, assess a problem, identify a plan of action, identify resistance to change, address the barriers, and then go forward. And I used that gift in I guess, a natural way without really realizing I was doing it to implement my strategy and vision in every organization that I went to. In hindsight, I realized that this was something that I could offer to other people, that perhaps they would buy it. So that is one of the lines of business that Muse does, which is organizational development, organizational change. It's one of the things we do. What I think I wasted a lot of time on in my career is thinking about my weaknesses and shoring them up. Oh, I don't know enough about budget. Oh, I don't know enough this. So, getting that training. And yet, if I focused more on my strengths versus my weaknesses, I think I may have been I don't know about more successful, but maybe had not so many difficult speed bumps to go over. The second point I want to make is I learned the value of building relationships versus coping and surviving. I do not intend to whine or complain or be ashamed of being a African American woman, a technologist in this environment. What I'm saying is that that requires a lot of coping, a lot of resilience, thriving, and surviving. That's important. However, it's also important to build relationships, to grow. And it seems to me that as I look back, that I wish that up until that point, that I spent more time building relationships versus just surviving. And then finally, I learned the relevance of leadership skills and the power. I think I felt up until a certain point that I could technical my way out of anything. But if you're in a pickle, sometimes you have to lead your way out. And I learned about the value of leadership, not just as a manager, but if you are a non-manager, that leadership is relevant. Even if you're a parent, that leadership is relevant. So I'll say a little bit more about leadership. So people have asked the question, well, what is leadership? What is it? And since the 1800s, we've tried to understand that. The first study of that was the great man theories of the late 1800s, where they looked at men who were leaders, what were their traits? And they said leadership looks like that. In the 1920s, in the industrial age, when you had factories and everything, leadership was about getting obedience, getting people to do things on time, engendering loyalty and cooperation. In the 40s, around the time of World War II, it was about directing activities. Organizations were more bureaucratic and a lot of coordination was required. In the 60s, more information and more thought about the behaviors and how people could come together and work towards shared goals. Well, the flower children aged, and then in the 80s, it was about love and non-coercive influence and everybody just getting along and doing things like that. In 21st century, and now it's more about being authentic, being you. One thing that's really important to me is servanthood. Who are you serving? Are you doing good for somebody? And then finally, I think, and I'll say a little bit more about this, being able to adapt, considering what things that we're dealing with right now, that's very important. And I'll say more about that later. So what is a leader? Here's just a simple definition from Brene Brown. As a leader is someone who takes responsibility, who finds the potential in people. The leader sees a 10 on everybody's head and motivates them and encourages them to do their best. A leader is self-aware, is vulnerable, and has courage. So today, leaders have a tremendous challenge. The challenges of the rapid change of everything, of technology, of societal issues like we're dealing with a pandemic now. We have climate issues, we have financial market issues, we have global conflict, all of these things. We have very, very difficult problems that require a lot of moving parts to come together to come with, to develop some outcome. And that's a very difficult interpersonal thing to happen. The interactions with people are intense, the global, and when you consider the aspects of the CIO of the stars, you got to think about extraterrestrial issues and communicating in beyond low Earth orbit and things like that. And undoubtedly, that gives us a certain amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt when we deal with this chaos. So, gosh, it's just a mess. What are we going to do? Well, it's time that it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to step back and not maybe our way out, but to lead and manage our way out. So I've said leadership and I've said management. So what's the difference? The leader is a visionary, the manager is a builder. The leader points the direction, the manager lays new track. The manager does things right, the leader does the right thing. And both of them go together in order to get through some of the sticky wickets that we have before us. So the takeaways, as far as management goes, it's about communication, it's about being authentic, being yourself, and helping people understand what's going on and giving them resources to solve the problems that they need to solve. From a leadership perspective, the takeaways are that sometimes things are so difficult, you can't just roll up your sleeves and get things done. You have to orchestrate, lead from the balcony, I'll call it, to direct things and give people the authority and accountability and resources to do the things that they need to do. A leader during this time has to manage their own stress. as to manage their own stress, and be disciplined and paying attention to the problems beforehand and staying in the fight. And during these times, it's important to be resilient and adaptive. Learn to recognize when change is coming, not when it's too late. To learn from your mistakes and the mistakes of others. One of the biggest mistakes that, well, I have many, but one mistake that I made had to do with faith, which I'll say something else about later, that I needed to lead a very difficult implementation of a help desk that was going to serve the entire agency, all of NASA, 100,000 people. And the implementation was a mess. It was just a mess. With help desk, you usually measure it by how many seconds it takes the agent to answer the call. We were measuring this in hours and days. It was so bad. And I remember that I was feeling that the people who were managing this, they were doing such a bad job, it was just worthless. And I'm thinking, they're worthless. It'll never happen. The help desk was in New Orleans. So I said, they're just a bunch of swamp people. And then I realized that the problem was me. And I thought they were stupid swamp people. I went back down there and then I decided to actually talk to them and listen to them. And I found out that they weren't stupid swamp people. They were people who lost their homes during Hurricane Katrina and who came to work anyway. All they wanted was to get together with their friends and family and eat catfish and have a couple of cold beers. And they wanted to work hard. They just wanted somebody to believe in them. And my lack of belief, I realized, was affecting how they performed. So I learned about having faith in people and how it was important for me as a leader. So, what about you? I guess maybe you're in school or you're struggling to work from home. Maybe you have children and you have to teach them at home and the dog's barking and you need toilet paper, right? So you might feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you don't know what's going to happen next. There's this third wave. What are you learning something that's valuable? Like for me, I just got a PhD, so what am I going to do with it? I'm an old woman. What am I going to do? So I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of people that aren't sure what the future is going to hold. And maybe it might not get better. We don't know. But still, you have the courage to go forward. Even if you don't know, you have to lean into that uncertainty and stay vigilant about opportunities as they come up and look for signs of things getting better. Things can't stay bad, things will get better. And then the lesson for me that I remember every day is about having faith and forgiving mistakes, especially innocent mistakes. I looked at the brochure that was out about me, which really was not, that picture was not taken. It's not my high school yearbook picture. I promise it's not. And it's not that long ago. But one of the things that I did was I decided not to color the gray in my hair. I was going to let the gray come out. And I realized that that changed me. That changed me in terms of realizing that, yes, I'm getting older. Yes, life is finite. Yes, you don't have all the time in the world. What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? What's really important versus what doesn't matter in the scheme of things? And I wake up every morning and I look at this gray hair and I think about what really matters. So, what about you? So, we're in this quarantine and people are thinking, like, okay, I'm going to be on hold. I'm going to hold up. And when this quarantine is over, things will be better. It's my ticket to the top. But in history, great things happen during quarantines. Just want to talk about a couple of them. During the Great Plague, Isaac Newton's university closed down and he was forced to go home during the Great Plague. And while he was home, he did a lot of experiments, and those experiments went on to inform his laws of motion and gravity, which has it's changed the world, right? John Milton wrote Paradise Lost. William Shakespeare wrote some of his greatest works during the quarantine, King Lear, Macbeth, and Antony and Cleopatra. So what will be your next great thing? What will it be? So in conclusion, I want to talk briefly about what I learned after I graduated from Hopkins. I learned to adapt, to reinvent myself if I needed to. I learned to hone my skills and use some of my technology skills to build relationships and to communicate. I learned to have courage to act when others couldn't or wouldn't. Another gift that I have, which I underused up until this point, is my spidey senses, my sixth sense, and using that to intuit what the next opportunity might be, where to adapt, where to be creative or entrepreneurial. And then finally, to merge leadership and management together to obtain outstanding outcomes. And those are a few references, and that's it.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much for a really a wonderful and inspiring presentation. It's now time for our question and answer portion. And to ask questions, I'm asking the audience. You can use perhaps the chat function or the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will take a look at what you put there. Oh, and we have a question, except for some reason I can't access the Q&A.
I have it.
You have it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you read the question and respond, and I'll just monitor the chat.
Okay. From LaQuasha, I hope we were talking about pronouncing names, LaQuasha. I messed up her name. I just know it already. Very encouraging lecture. I'm still trying to determine if I want to focus on technical leadership versus functional leadership. What are some nuggets that you can share to identify where my strengths are so that I don't waste a lot of time? I think is a great question. So let's see, answer live, I will say. What I would say is I was in that same boat where I was trying to figure out, should I focus on technical or should I focus on functional? So I did both. I did both. And I'll tell a quick little story when I had committed to that functional leadership, and I was the deputy director at Department of Justice. And I, I just got in there and I was unpacking my office. Everything was great. And I was trying to establish myself as, don't ask me technical questions. I'm a leader, right? I'm in charge. And so somebody came in my office and they bought a program that I wrote 10 years prior, right? And said, well, I know that you're a leader, you gave up the technical stuff, but do you think you could look at this and help me debug it? And proudly, I still had my leadership chops, but the thing that it helped me see is that, you have to, I guess there's a saying that says you have to let go of one vine to catch another. And at some point, you'll keep swinging back and forth from technical, functional. You're going to have to let go of one vine and catch the other before you and then go on. I think that one of the things, because I do a lot of mentoring with people, and one of the things that happens, and this gray-haired woman is really speaking from this experience, is that you want to still live your heyday, live your heyday when you're a great technician. At some point, you have to grow and evolve to where you're going to be, and it might require letting go that technical vine. I hope that answered the question. I have one from Toby. what is postmasters and what made you want to go back for a PhD after so much success and years out of school? So I don't know, Dean, if there postmasters still?
Yes, we do have postmaster certificates and things like that.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So the postmasters was 18 credits after the master's degree. So I got a master's of science in mathematics. So the postmasters would have been more mathematics classes, more advanced ones. And it also included, I think, 6 credits that was individual study. And in the 6 credits of individual study, I did research and co-published my first academic research paper, and that was done in the postmasters. So it's just 18 credits postmasters. I won't call it a PhD, but it could be considered coursework for the PhD if you choose the courses carefully.
But nonetheless, if I may um, interject, you clearly chose to pursue additional education at a time when many other people would say, "Look at what I've done. Look at my career. I don't need this formal additional education." And so that's an interesting decision,
Oh,
and speaks to lifelong learning, which we try to instill in all of our students, but the need to always be learning. And so it's
yeah.
admirable.
Yeah, that was a part of a question. So one of the things that I did after this, I wrote a book. I wrote a book. Here's the book. I wrote a book on leadership.
Uh-huh.
And I decided that I wanted to write another one. As I was my second one was going to be about bad leadership. So to prepare for the book, to go back to the point about lifelong learning, I decided I needed to learn about bad leadership, and I wanted to learn more about good leadership and bad leadership. So that drove me back to the learning mode of being. So I just wanted to learn more.
Hmm.
One of the uh, uh, I don't know if I would call it a criticism, but what gives me weird sideways looks like that is, why do you want to, what are you going to do with your PhD? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It's what I wanted to do. Why'd you do that to yourself? I wanted to. And so now that I'm out of it, I realize that what I turned into is a lover of wisdom and doing research and wanting to know more. I feel like a sponge and hungry to know even more. What do I want to do with it? I want to learn more about leadership, and I want to get that next book written.
Very nice. I think there's another question. Oh, I have a question. Now I can see it. Can you talk about the role any mentors had in your career and how they impacted you?
Yeah, so this is the whining part of the lecture. And I will say that I have had a very difficult time finding mentors. I think that it's difficult for women to get mentors in the technology field, and it's difficult for African American women to get mentors in the technology field. So I was whining about that one day to somebody, and he said to me something that I remember forever, which is the best way to get a mentor is to be a mentor. And so then from that point on, I decided I would mentor anybody, everybody I could, I would mentor them. And so then this magical thing happened in opening myself up to that, that people who I mentored were mentoring me. And so the reverse mentoring, it's a real thing. And
Mhm.
it really helped me. Now I'm at another point of inflection where I need somebody to mentor me in my business. Well, the problem is that I'm different from everybody else. I'm not following the same kind of path. And I have a certain personality that doesn't necessarily match a ruthless devil may care attitude that somebody else has. So I have to find somebody that I can mentor and who can mentor back to me to help me in this next phase of my career.
Very nice. Very interesting. There's a question from the audience. What is the proudest moment of your career? What are you most proud of?
There was a project that I led when I was at ATF, and it was implementing a project that everybody said would fail. And it was, even the people who were in the project thought it was going to fail. And it was showtime, just this one, the point where this was either going to work or not work. And the meeting that this was going to happen was at 9 o'clock. And that morning, people started just literally, there were people crying, and they were saying, what if this doesn't work? What if we did this and this don't work? And I said, okay, I tell you what, I got the answers. Meet me in the boardroom at 9:15. So I met him in the boardroom 9:15, and I said, you know what? I don't know the answers. You know what? You're afraid, you need to be, but guess what? We're gonna make it work. And it worked. That project was successful. We saved millions of dollars in budget because of the successful implementation of that. And it was a model for other people to follow. The thing I'm most proud of is the two things: the people that did it and the courage that they had, and that I believed in them. And this is where I draw back on that lesson I learned. The swamp people I didn't believe in, and I forgot. I forgot how belief in people is so strong. But I'm proud of that moment, and I want to hold on to it forever.
All right, very interesting. We do have a question that's sort of similar, but with slightly different is, can you share some of what you consider to be the most exciting moments that happened during your time at NASA?
I saw the launch of the last space shuttle.
Oh,
That was absolutely exciting. I saw 3 launches live when I was there. First of all, it's exciting to go to a launch in person. You see it on TV, you kind of know what it is, but the thing that you can't recreate on TV is how it shakes the ground, right? You can feel the heat
mm,
from the engines. You hear the sonic boom. You can't quite hear the sonic boom on when you're looking at a recording of it, but you can hear this. And so it's all a crescendo. It's the ground shakes, and then it lifts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ground shakes, then it lifts. Then you feel the heat, and it goes up, and then you start hearing the sonic booms go pop, 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 pop. You can feel the acceleration. That was the most exciting. And to see it 3 times and to see it on the last launch was amazing.
wow, wow.
Dr. Cutler, Dr. Cutler. Oh, I'm sorry.
You,
I
you,
see,
you see a friend.
yes. When I talked about that postmasters and the research, the riveting and the riveting examination of eigenvalues of the Laplacian on polygons. My professor was Dr. James Cutler, who is online. So I am very happy to see him.
And I have no doubt he's happy to see you too. No doubt. I have one question. We'll see if there's more questions from the audience, but I do have one question. A lot of the steps you took in your career, the way I heard you describe them, even things like saying, "Boy, everyone around me is a pre-med, but that's not for me, and I'm going to go in a different direction," require courage. It's so much easier to go with the crowd. How did you find the courage during your career to take those steps, to move in that other direction, even though it wasn't what everyone was doing, perhaps?
Hmm. So, one thing about courage that I think is important is that it requires leaning into fear. You've got to accept being afraid. And I had this another pivotal moment in my life, and I was in high school. And I mentioned earlier that I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts. I played French horn and trumpet. So I was a I was a trumpet player, and I decided to switch to French horn. I played piano too, but I decided to switch to French horn because um, the trumpet players at Duke Ellington were just so good. One of the ones, he just died actually of COVID. Wallace Roney. He's a local jazz talent, and he's playing trumpet. Like, I can't play with him, so I'm going to play French horn because there was only one French horn player, and they needed two. So I switched and got into Duke Ellington with no audition playing French horn. So I was a good French horn player, and the teacher wanted me to do a French horn solo.
Mhm.
So I did a French horn solo, and in front of, I don't even remember who. It was in front of the class. It was for a student recital, and I hit a wrong note, and just got so nervous and upset. I started crying, and I couldn't finish the song. So then the teacher said, you were doing really good. You should do this for the PTA. So now I just collapsed in front of my classmates, and now he wants me to do it in front of the PTA. So I couldn't finish in front of the classmates, but now I'm going to do it in front of the PTA. So I get to the PTA meeting, and I play my French horn solo, and I get to that point where I crashed and burned before, and I made it, right? Except that I was so nervous, and I had to hold a note, do, except it was quivering, do, not because of vibrato, but because I was so nervous. And so I heard the crack and the nervousness, and I started crying. And so tears were coming down my, oh, oh, and then I finished it. And then a parent or two, a couple of us said, oh, bless your heart. You had the courage to get up there, and you had the courage to make it through. And the fact that you did it was great. So I started worrying less about, oh, what if I hit a wrong note? What if I do this? What if I do that? It's the courage to start, to, as my favorite character does, Yoda, don't try, do or not do, try not. And to just do it, and you survive it. And I learned from that failure on stage, as being being the French horn player that ran off the stage crying, that courage was something that could help you through something, and the fear could help you through something. So I went on to play piano for my church. And I started realizing that this fear that I had wasn't something that needed to be conquered, but it was something that could be used, and used to play. And so courage comes from using fear to go forward.
So Linda, I'll on that note, I will thank you very much for your presentation and for your willingness to answer the questions from the audience. Without doubt, you exemplify the kind of leadership and courage that you talked about, and that's really wonderful. So thank you very much. You truly are a leader of your field. Again, I want to also thank Franny, and special thanks to all of the folks who are attending today's lecture. I hope that today was an inspiration to follow your dreams, aim for the stars, and achieve all that you want to achieve. And so I will say thank you. And to everyone in the audience, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye.